In the name I am that I am, Sanat Kumara, I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangels, beloved mighty Choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nala, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I do in the action of the sacred fire in this hour, descend almighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God slain. I demand the full power of beloved mighty to see me with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send it to me, Lord, my Savior, Gautama and Sanat Kumara. Come Lord now in the victory of the God slain. Send the light of 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, stand, mighty, stand, mighty, stand. Presence of the Father reign around this fortune now. I call upon the great single sunlight. I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved stand, beloved stand, beloved stand. I call upon the electronic solar, the rings of the great single sun, the servants of God. I call upon the electronic fire rings. I call upon
Good morning, America, and all the other countries in the world. I'm sorry I'm late today, but I had a very late night. Why was it late? Well, it was late because I was working on things. So here I am. And what am I working on, you ask? Or you might ask, if you want to know, I'm working on a fairly significant post on Aurora, Colorado. And frankly, I don't have enough hours in the day. If I had another 10 hours in the day, I could get everything I need to get done, but I don't. So I wind up falling asleep at 5 in the morning. So here I am. Just a little late, but at least I'm here. You know, it was really interesting. Last night, actually this morning, when I was writing the description for the show, getting ready to book it, I thought maybe I should do it for 11. So I'm really probably not going to wake up. And usually I'm pretty good at getting up. But today I decided to keep hitting the snooze button on my alarm. And I listened to the radio to wake up. And the guys that I was listening to sounded just like the guys that follow them on the radio. So anyway, I apologize. I apologize a lot. So one of the things that I'm talking about in this post, and it's funny, there's nobody waiting. I don't blame them. One of the things I was talking about with this post is Jupiter, and specifically Jupiter in Gemini, and how it relates to what's happened in Aurora, Colorado. And it's kind of a much bigger thing than Jupiter in Gemini. It's how do I describe this? It's bizarre, to be honest with you. I've stumbled across something with this thing in Colorado, and so many different elements that are attached to it that it's kind of mind-boggling, and which is one of the reasons why I was up so late trying to work on this thing, because like I said, I don't have a lot of time. But let me try to break it down to you. There's a connection between what's happened in Colorado and the films of Christopher Nolan. Now, in this kind of cryptographic world that we're all living in, and we talk about hidden in plain sight or predictive programming or the externalization of the hierarchy, and these are all things that are becoming more and more common in our lexicon. So what do they mean? Well, let's break them down one by one. By the way, externalization of the hierarchy is also known as the revelation of the method. I'll talk about all four of those things. Let's start with predictive programming. Okay, so predictive programming is something that appears in a film and then later appears in reality. One of the best known examples of this, it wasn't a film, it was a TV series. It was called The Lone Gunman, which was a spin-off of The X-Files. And in that series, there's an episode where 9/11 happens, almost minute for minute, frame by frame, and it happens well enough in advance of 9/11. There's another example of the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage, and some of the things that happened in Knowing happened in quote-unquote real life, whatever real life is. So you have to ask yourself, well, okay, is this just a coincidence? Is just this some sort of cosmic occurrence, some sort of synchronicity that is, hurtling at us through the collective unconscious, that somehow the writers of these scripts were tapped into some greater source of information, and that the forces of the universe colluded to make these things happen? Because this was destined to happen. This was supposed to be. That's one example of, or that's one possibility of how these things can work in film or TV. The other possibility is that film and TV and reality aren't that separate. What do I mean by that? Well, it means that the people who are writing the scripts are working with the people who are writing the script for reality. I want you to just think about that for a moment. So that would mean there is collusion, and it's not necessarily collusion between the individual writing the script in the universe, but the individual writing the script and people that are engaging in events on the outside. So there is a priori knowledge, so to speak. And if that is the case, well, then there is something very, very dark afoot. This is the case in Aurora, where there is a Batman comic where the entire event had been played out in print. Just like Aurora. It happened. It happened in the comic. Okay, now you could say, well, James Holmes read that comic. Maybe he did. We'll get to James Holmes in a minute. Then you have to ask yourself, well, if he didn't read that comic, how does that happen? Again, did the artist somehow, or the writer somehow, have this notion in his brain, and again, it just meshed with the gears of the universe as they click together, and then we have this terrible tragedy. Is it one of those things that once you give the birth to the idea comes to life? Or, again, is it something more sinister than that? That's predictive programming. It looks like it happens of its own volition, and you go, wow, look at that. Just like the comic book, just like the TV show, just like the movie. And it's supposed to give you a sense that these things have happened before, which in some ways they have. And there's a conditioning. You are conditioned to begin to accept these events as reality. And in many cases, they're not. In many cases, they are staged hyper-reality. That's predictive programming. Hidden in plain sight is a little bit different. Hidden in plain sight is something that a lot of people who are now into this thing, this uncovering of the revelation of the method, it's what they do. It's what they look around, they say, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. You know, here's this symbol, and we can get into that a little bit with Aurora. In fact, we will get into it with Aurora. And then they begin to put together a narrative. And then they begin to interpret the narrative. Well, what does this mean? And that can go in many different directions. For instance, hidden in plain sight, clear hidden in plain sight event was the Super Bowl with Madonna. And everything that was related to the stage, everything that she was wearing, the sequence of the pieces of music, everything, where it was taking place, everything. So then we begin to say, okay, well, all right, let's untangle this, and then why? To what end is this happening, and why? It's hidden in plain sight, because apparently this is, you know, the overall mindset is that these guys theoretically have this obsession with telling. It's almost like a confessional, right? It's like a game. It's like an obsession. It's obsessively compulsive. They have to put these symbols up there in order for them to create, in some ways, their own tableau, which becomes the externalization of their hierarchy and their method, which is an occult method. Okay? So that's hidden in plain sight, leaving clues at the scene of the crime, so to speak. And then we, you know, run along and put them together, and, you know, pick up the pieces. Meanwhile, they have a good chuckle at the whole thing. That's hidden in plain sight. So now we've had predictive programming, hidden in plain sight. Now let's talk about the externalization of the hierarchy, aka the revelation of the method. Externalization of the hierarchy comes from Madame Blavatsky. And Madame Blavatsky was a theosophist, and she's probably, whether you like her or not, she's probably one of the most important figures in the 20th century. She's influenced everyone, and I mean everyone, from Michael Sarion to probably Michael Bolton. Okay, I mean this the whole, all of her ideas that come out of Isis Unveiled are very important ideas because they have shaped culture in ways that people can't even begin to comprehend. In those books, she talks about the hierarchy. It's a spiritual hierarchy. It's not a hierarchy of this world, but it's a spiritual hierarchy of another world. And that spiritual hierarchy is consisted of ascended masters. And those ascended masters are attempting to bring their world into alignment with our world. And for that to happen, there must be a human agency to be able to facilitate their experience, to facilitate the birth of what she would call the new age. And there's a lot of things that are buried in the theosophical canon, a lot more than I can get into in the next hour and 2 minutes. But one of the things that she talks about in this is this whole concept of the Aryan race, and that there are a number of root races. I believe there are 9 root races, and the Aryan root race is the most dominant and the quote unquote most special. It is the race that is meant to lead this world. And the other root races are the Asiatic root race and the black root race. And according to Blavatsky, they all come from other planets. So this notion of Aryanism at the top of the pecking order is very important to this whole idea of the externalization of the hierarchy. And the Aryan race is the most intellectually fit and the most occult aware and savvy of all the other root races. And they're the ones that manufacture this version of reality through the application of symbols and other magical means, sound, light, you name it. The world is created as we know it through the methodology of the Aryan, quote unquote, masters of the planet. Now, what's happening is that there is a point where Blavatsky says that all of this, which is happening on the subtle planes as well as this plane, that there will be a moment where it goes from being an invisible network to being a visible network, that everything would be seen for everyone else to witness. And that is called the externalization of the hierarchy, or what Michael Hoffman calls the revelation of the method. And by doing that, it turns every single one of us into initiates, that we now are following this magical working as it unfolds across the planet. And this is why people are attempting to unravel or uncover things like the Olympics and what's happening in the Olympics. Now, this is an important stage in all this because we are now becoming aware of what's happening. And that's good, and it's not so good, because as we become aware of what's happening, it signals to us that something of momentous significance is approaching. It's on its way, that the externalization of the hierarchy has an omega point, or not an omega point, it would be actually, it's an omega point. And that omega point would be an event that would signal their arrival. And I believe that what happened in Aurora is, if not that event, it's very close to that event. And we'll get into the symbolism of Aurora in just a moment. So now we have the externalization of the hierarchy, or the revelation of the method. And by doing these things, and we are doing them, why? Because we're trying to make sense of, what's happening. And on some level, it's important to understand. It's important to understand what's going on. On another level, by understanding it, you're actually empowering it. You're giving these symbols and these experiences power. We're energizing them through a collective ritual, and we're not even always aware that we're doing that. So it's a real slippery slope between untangling and enabling and being a part of it. So we're at that point now where the revelation of the method, or externalization of the hierarchy, where the spiritual masters of the world are coming forth and letting themselves be known. So this is what we're engaged in terms of understanding this. Now, given all those things I just talked about, hidden in plain sight, predictive programming, the revelation of the method, or the externalization of the hierarchy, now we can begin to talk about Aurora. Now, this is an incomplete synopsis, and I'm going to have more on my blog. I'm 3,000 words into this, and I'm just scratching the surface. But what I'm getting at here, what I'm attempting to share, is that what took place there is about a number of different things. It theoretically is about gun control, but that's been going on for a while, and it's yet another event that is trying to wrest control of the guns from the American people. Now, there is a UN, it's not a bill, you wouldn't call it a bill, but it's a UN ordinance. It's basically a global gun ban that the UN is trying to push and get done, I believe, in 2 days. I think it's the 27th, which also coincides, by the way, with the start of the Olympics. And that, it's a treaty, and that treaty will literally sort of supersede the Constitution. They know that they can't really go after that one part of the Constitution. They can nip at it, but they can't completely take it away. It's one of the most entrenched pieces of the Constitution, Second Amendment rights. But the UN is going to try to go on top of it, just like they've tried to go on top of local and national law with things like NAFTA or GATT. So this is an attempt to come over the top. And if Obama works with them and signs onto it, well, it's kind of a big deal. Because now, theoretically, there can be international forces that could come from, and I'm not being paranoid here, but there's a possibility this could happen. Could literally come to your house and demand to take your guns based on this. And how do you think Americans will respond? Well, I can tell you right now, they're not going to let that happen. So then we'd have a conflict on our hands. And trust me, all these things have been played out. It's been played out, computer simulated models and game theory hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And keep the word time in mind. It's a very important word when we're talking about this and what I'm about to share with you. So that's taking place. That's a big one, right? Guns, theoretically, get them away from people. The other thing is security. What was the first thing you heard out of the mouths of people that were in the seats of power? Oh, we need more security. We need more security. We can't let this ever happen again. We've got to put scanners and this and that, blah, 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 in theaters. So what does that mean? Well, it means an abrogation of our rights, right? Right to privacy, right to bear arms. So these are now being chopped away by this event. These are very important things. And I'll tell you what, this is the implication or the implementation of security, extremely high-tech security, in all public places, and not just movie theaters, but shopping centers, restaurants, yes, restaurants, football games, government buildings, and here's the kicker, schools. It's coming. And it's coming not because they want to keep people safe and secure, but there will be a time, theoretically, based on everything that I'm seeing, that there will be a resistance, and the resistance will carry weapons. I'm not into this. That's not the reality that I want to affirm, but I see it. And all these things are being put in place for that time, not this time, that time. These are all preemptive measures. And I talked about this again on the show on Friday a little bit, but there's also a huge amount of money involved in security, enormous amounts of money. And all the security industries are salivating. They're salivating because this is the new economic model, which I months and maybe even years ago, dubbed the economy of control. We've gone from an economy of production to an economy of control. And this is what all these security measures are about. Basically, we'll be paying people to watch other people. That's it. That's it. And those people that watch other people will have been indoctrinated to believe that the people they're watching could be a potential James Holmes. So it's in their best interest to watch other people. And if this thing unwinds the way that it's theoretically headed, you don't want to be a part of that reality. Let me tell you, you just don't. Because the types of technology that they have and are willing to implement go far beyond you walking through a sensor and seeing a firearm show up on your person. Now, they'll be able to do anything. They'll be able to read your thoughts. There's the technology where they can scan your brain, and they can look at your brain type. They can look at your brain wave at any given moment and begin to create a psychographic profile based on what they're seeing inside your head. They have these lasers that from 150 feet can just hit you, hit a portion of your DNA, know everything about you. Everything. This is the world that we're headed. It's a world of complete and utter surveillance and control. And the Aurora event is a trigger event for this to take place. Now, there are layers of reality. There are timelines. And this is a very important notion to understand as we begin to get into this. Because what happened in Aurora is everything that I've mentioned already. It's the implementation of these things on a social order. But it is also about the manipulation of reality. And on one level, you can say, okay, well, we've seen this before. The guy's a patsy. Maybe he's like Sirhan, who couldn't even remember his name, after he killed Bobby Kennedy. Or Lee Harvey Oswald. We're talking Manchurian Candidate, right? So that theoretically could be a manipulation of reality. So they've manipulated reality to insert a person who does something, and then all of a sudden, chaos ensues, right? But it's deeper than that. It's deeper than that. Because when we look at these events, we begin to see how they are connected. And they're connected in ways that, again, if you put the clues together, hidden in plain sight, and step back, something very different is taking place. And when I say the manipulation of reality, I'm talking about the manipulation of this world in terms of time, space, thought, events. And it goes back to the fact that these events employ a variety of techniques, and some of them are extremely sophisticated. So sophisticated, you have no idea. Absolutely none. Or maybe you do. But let me try to go a little bit deeper, okay? All right, so let's start with the event. Where did it take place? It took place in Aurora, Colorado. Why Aurora, Colorado? It's a good question. Why not Denver, Colorado? Why not Grand Junction, Colorado? Why not Colorado Springs? The name Aurora is significant. Aurora essentially means dawn. Okay, dawn. Aurora is the goddess of the dawn. Greek mythology, she was the one that brought you the morning. Now, the event happened at midnight. It was a midnight showing in Aurora, okay? Keep that in mind. So what does that mean? It means essentially black dawn. It is the breaking of the black dawn, or a phrase which you have probably heard many times, the dawn of a new day, which is parlance for the birth of the new age or a new age. So now we have aurora dawn, black midnight, dark night rises, like the sun that rises in the morning to bring the dawn. Okay, so this is a very important piece. This is where it all starts. It's the movie, The Dark Night Rises, aurora at midnight, the black dawn. This is the black dawn of a new day, this event. It's connected to Columbine, which is not far from aurora. What is Columbine? Columbine is a derivation of Columbian. Now, Columbia is the it is one name for America. It is a derivation of Christopher Columb. Christopher Columb, right? So it's Columbia, the place of Christopher Columb, or Columbus. It's a name for America, Columbia. So now we have Columbine, Columbia, aurora. So it is the dark dawn of a new day, because these two events are connected in their proximity, geography, and also their intent. The dawn of a new day, a black dawn of a new day in America. So this is important to note. Now, if you go to the theater, if you look at the picture of the theater, and it's a picture everybody is familiar with, there's the emergency tape, it says Century 16, and then there are a series of marks on the marquee. Century 16, century is 100, okay, 100. And 16, well, 16, so it's 116. If you turn it around and reverse it, 116 becomes 911. And if you look at the marquee of the theater, there are a series of X's. You can actually pull out 3 X's from the marquee theater, which now becomes XXX. What is XXX? It is the Olympics. It's the Olympics. And that event happened 7 days before the opening ceremonies. It's important to know. So now, what do we have? Well, what we have is we have this connection to the Olympics, an energetic connection to the Olympics. Now, there are people, Ellis Taylor, Katie Galante, others, who believe that these events are part of a greater planetary ritual. And so you literally feast on energy. And what do they feast on? They feast on fear, they feast on pathos, they feast on anxiety, they feast on all these things, and then use that energy to create more events. Now, Denver is not far from Salt Lake City. There's a planetary grid. I think it's the Becker or the Beckham grid. Anyway, there's a planetary grid that shows where all the major ley line hotspots are on the planet, and sort of the network that they're connected to. And the big hotspot is Salt Lake City in this country. One of them, Salt Lake City, huge. It's like a major confluence of energy. There's a reason why the Mormons chose Salt Lake City for their religion. Denver is not far from Salt Lake City, and in terms of the ley line connectivity, is in a direct alignment. And then there's as part of this network, the next sort of major, there are other like hotspots, but if you go at the same latitude across from Denver, the next major pulsation where the ley line energy literally just rises out of the planet, and then there's another network of ley lines that come out of it, is Scotland. It's the north of Scotland. It's actually near Rosslyn Chapel, which is where theoretically the Knights Templar escaped to, where we have the start of the Priory of Sion. And then that ley line comes right down into London. Again, and all those ley lines, or that one line, winds up in Giza, the Great Pyramid, which is another very, very significant access point. So theoretically, when these events happen, they are transmitted via these geomagnetic nodes, these ley lines, and it can move from place to place to place to place. And ultimately, everything leads to Giza. That's where it all leads to. So from a geographical standpoint, Denver, i.e. Aurora, is on the map. It's also very close proximity to the Denver airport. And the Denver airport, well, you know, just go online and look at Denver International Airport. And you can just spend days in that rabbit hole with the mural of the Denver airport, which, by the way, theoretically contains predictive programming, or hidden in plain sight, where there is a person with a gun. He's Caucasian. It's a semi-automatic rifle, and he's killed literally hundreds of children. And out of that, there are troops, major troops with gas masks and all kinds of crazy shit that then descend upon the world. And then after that, there is a planetary kumbaya where all things live in harmony, all children of colors, different colors and stripes. But it's part of this process, which is problems, the Hegelian thing, problem, solution, outcome. It's all there in the Denver airport. And it does, in some ways, reflect what happened in Aurora. Now, there's also a major series of tunnels beneath the Denver airport. And apparently there's like a city, an entire city underneath the Denver airport. And it's one of these continuity of government places, apparently. But that land is owned by the Queen of England. So keep that in mind. You know, keep it in mind when we talk about these events that are linked with other events. Energetically, that is her land. And I haven't even gotten into James Holmes yet. So this is just setting the stage. Now, the big piece here is Batman, the movie. Batman, the comic strip. Batman, the narrative. Because it's not just that Batman movie. There's two other Batman films. And in fact, it's not just the Batman films that are part of this very elaborate, in many ways, psychotronic manipulation of reality. What I'm beginning to understand about film is that film and TV and television, what they do, what it does is it takes images, obviously, which you're watching, and it imprints them on your DNA. And your DNA now becomes a living receptor of these events. The events live in you. And when they live in you, then you begin to externalize the energy, the symbolism, the power of, and the reality of the event themselves. So in essence, what film and television is doing is it's manipulating our interface with so-called reality. It's very powerful stuff, television and film, extremely powerful. And it doesn't even have to be an elaborate movie like The Dark Knight Rises. It can be a commercial. A 30-second commercial can get inside of the holography of your cells and begin to drive you. It can drive your desires. It can drive what you think are your own thoughts. Oh, I want that. I want that. I need that. This is all. There's a great episode with Darren Brown. A great episode with Darren Brown. Darren Brown is an illusionist, and in this episode, he set these guys up, and they were ad men, and he took them from one part of London to another part of London, where he had them work on these drawings. He gave them an idea for an ad campaign, and he gave them the elements. And these guys drew these pictures. And what happened was that, and they thought they were being original. And what happened was that Darren Brown had gotten onto his sketchbook, and he had sketched everything out beforehand. And he was in the room with them the whole time. The sketchbook had not left. And so after they revealed what they thought was a very clever, original idea, he went over to his very large pad and revealed the same images that they had already drawn. And he'd done that ahead of time. And they looked at him and they were like, mouths agape. How did he do that? How did you know? Well, he knew because they took those guys on a very specific route through London. And they loaded everything in their view with the exact same symbols and images that would then be called up during this little brainstorming session that they'd have to use, that they would use ultimately to create this campaign. So what Darren Brown was illustrating was that there was no original thought, that they had been programmed to do this. He did this again with in fact it was him. He dressed up as a bum in a mall, and he front-loaded all of these images in the mall. He got somebody to do a survey with people to front-load their consciousness about giving. All these things in the mall, all these signs, soul, S-O-L-E, there was all kinds of triggers to give. And he sat down at the mall, didn't do anything. He looked smelly, and he looked like a homeless person. And he made 300 pounds in an hour and a half. 300 pounds in an hour and a half. It's a lot of money. That's $600 pretty much in an hour and a half. And he didn't have to do anything. Why? Because the people were programmed to give. Okay, so this is again what I'm talking about. And when we see films, I'm not saying you stop seeing films, but when you see films, what happens is that the complexity of the reality begins to live inside of you, and it begins to alter everyone's reality, person by person by person by person. And so what we're living with these sort of consensus, an unconscious consensus of reality, is something very different than a reality that can emerge through us apart from the manipulation of these images and symbols inside of us. And so if that can occur, if that can take place, then the sky is the freaking limit, let me tell you. Because if you get enough people to see a certain thing, well, Well, it's kind of like Hitler at Nuremberg, really, without the rally. And the Batman series is very popular, extremely popular. It's huge. It's on huge numbers. And if you go back to the original Batman, which is the tableau for all of this, it sets the tone for everything. Everything. It's all in the original Batman. So what do we have? We have Bruce Wayne. Now, keep in mind, here's where the astrology part comes into play. All of this happened with Jupiter and Gemini. Mercury retrograde. But the big player is Jupiter and Gemini, which in astrological parlance is a malefic. It's a malefic sign. So, what does it mean? Well, it means that the energy of a malefic sign or a malefic aspect can be used potentially in a malefic fashion. Just think about that for a moment. It's tapping into the aspect itself from an energetic perspective. Gemini is all about duality. It's all about duality. When we think of Gemini, we think of twins. Twins. We think of things like twin towers. We think of Boaz and Jachin, which are the two towers, which are theoretically the pillars of Freemasonry. If you go to any lodge, you'll see those two towers, and you'll see in the center a pyramid, or another obelisk right in the center, so it'll form a trinity. And Boaz and Jachin, if you go back far enough in time, theoretically, they were these large pillars. Excuse me. And in those pillars, they existed in. They were ejected from Atlantis. And in those pillars, which were hermetically sealed, were the instructions for essentially all the technology of Atlantis. It was kind of like, a message in a bottle. And those pillars eventually washed ashore in Egypt. And so they were opened, and then the mysteries, the Orphic mysteries of Atlantis, were then translated, decoded, and we have the birth of the modern mystery school. So those pillars are important, and they represent the twins, Gemini. And so when this event happened in Gemini, it's very, very important to note that, Jupiter and Gemini, very important. If you look at Batman, especially the movie Batman, not necessarily the comic, but the movie, this whole Gemini theme plays a very large role. First of all, Batman is split into two personas. There's Bruce Wayne, and then there's Batman, right? So here we go. We have Gemini right there, Bruce Wayne and Batman. His nemesis in the first movie is Scarecrow, but his real nemesis is Henri Ducard / Ra's al Ghul. Again, you have one person, two identities. In fact, Ducard becomes Ra's al Ghul after Batman destroys the temple, the Dark Temple in Tibet. By the way, Madame Blavatsky got all of her knowledge from going to Tibet, apparently. Then you have Scarecrow, who is Dr. Crane. So again, you have duality. You have Gemini. You have these dual personae, like all three of these guys. Okay? if you look at the evolution of Batman in the movie, he starts off when he loses his parents, traumatic. Traumatic programming ensues. Okay, he's now split. That event has split him. It's split his consciousness. And then he has to find himself, he has to, he's got to deal with his anger, he's got to deal with his guilt because he thinks he's the one that caused the death of his parents. And in order to do that, he has to go into the dark side. He has to journey and live the life of a criminal. He has to do all these things in order to understand the criminal mind. Because ultimately what he wants is he wants revenge. And this is, again, laid out in the film. So here we go. We go from innocence to experience, from light to dark, the journey into the other part of the human psyche, the shadow. So we're dealing with duality again. He's gone from his light side, or his unenlightened side, to his darker side. Now, from a tarot perspective, and this is all very important to understand, especially in relationship to the movie. From the tarot perspective, he is the Prince of Swords at that point. Prince of Swords rules Gemini, or Gemini rules the Prince of Swords. It is spycraft. It is learning. It is the accumulation of knowledge. It is shady. It is subtle. It does not necessarily have any conscience whatsoever. The swords are all mental, and the mind is divorced from the emotions. But when you pull the Prince of Swords, it's a mental card. It has nothing to do with emotions. The next card is the Knight of Swords. Okay, keep that in mind. The Knight of Swords. Now, when he goes to Tibet and eventually hooks up with Henri Ducard, by the way, Ducard also represents duality in the name Du, which is two, and card, which is carta, or chart. What is a chart? It's a map. So it's two maps. We're beginning to see now that there are two maps, two factions, two ways of going about and theoretically controlling the world through an organizing principle. And that's an important aspect to understand, because Ducard represents the League of Shadows. And I believe the League of Shadows is related to what's called the Sons of Belial, which come out of this relationship between Boaz and Jachin, and these two groups which have been pretty much fighting each other on the planet since Atlantis, who, by the way, come from space. So we're talking the Orions and the Syrians. Very important to note. So Ducard represents the Sons of Belial. And Batman theoretically represents the law of one, which allows people to go out and live their lives. And their whole thing is, hey, let's just step back and help these guys. We think they can manage themselves. Whereas the Sons of Belial will come in and say, hey, these people need the rule of law. The rule of law. And that's what Ducard represents. So there's a part in the film where they have a major sword fight on the ice. It's a very important scene because what are they using? They're using swords. They're not using rods. They're not doing a kendo thing. That would be wands. Very different. It would be a very different symbolic implementation. These are swords. So now the Prince of Swords is fighting the Knight of Swords. And the Knight of Swords is very different. The Knight of Swords is action. The Knight of Swords is justice. The Knight of Swords is the Templar. That's the Knight of Swords. And the Knight of Swords is vicious. And so what he's doing is he's initiating Bruce Wayne into the knighthood. And thus Bruce Wayne becomes a Knight of Swords. He moves from the Prince of Swords to the Knight of Swords. Now, Ra's al Ghul, a.k.a. Henry Ducard, is going to become the King of Swords, which is Aquarius. Just keep this in mind. He's trying to become the King of Swords. Let's look at the air. The Prince of Swords is Gemini. The Knight of Swords is Libra. It's justice. And in fact, there's a scene in the movie where Liam Neeson's character, Ducard Ras Al Ghul, says justice is balance. Justice is the implementation of balance. That is the Knight of Swords talking. If he can lay waste to Gotham, because Gotham has become so corrupt, he now channels Aquarius. He has become the King of Swords, and it is the implementation of the law for one through the application of the darker machinations of that versus allowing people to live their lives. So he is attempting to become a king in that moment. So this is open. Again, we're dealing with duality. Very, very important here. So what takes place? Well, there's a woman in the film, Rachel Dawes. Who is she played by? She's played by Katie Holmes. What's the shooter's name? James Holmes. You know, what is Katie Holmes in the film? She's a district attorney, but she's also engaged in psychology. She is learning from Dr. Crane about psychology and psychiatry and the workings of the mind and predicting how people will act. It's the manipulation of the mind. What was James Holmes involved in? Neurosciences. His father, apparently, based on what I've been able to figure out here through people, feeding me certain things, his father worked for DARPA. So this kid was one breath away from being engaged in some of the most sophisticated programs in the world with DARPA through his father. And he apparently was quite brilliant as well. And neuroscience is this whole study of how to use the mind and the cognitive faculties of the mind to manipulate people. That's what is going on in James Holmes' life. And in the movie, Katie Holmes is engaged in something similar. So again, here we have this careening of cinema and technology, and then the life event. So now, who is James Holmes? There's pictures of him look like the Joker, and he's trying to be the Joker. Again, a reference to one of the Batman films. So do you see where this is going? Now, all of a sudden, we're in this wash, this mental and astral wash where reality is bleeding on all these different levels. That is what's happening. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's go back to Gemini. Okay. If we look at certain characters in that film, in that Batman film, one of the main characters is Lucius Fox. Lucius Fox. And he's portrayed by Morgan Freeman. Okay. What is Morgan Freeman's name? It means free man, right? Free man. Now, theoretically, he is helping Bruce Wayne, who would be a member of the Law of One, and what do they want? Well, they want humanity to be, quote unquote, free to write their own script. So now we have Morgan Freeman playing Lucius Fox. What is Lucius? Lucius is a derivation of Lucifer, and Fox is crafty. So Lucifer is a crafty guy, and what Lucifer is going to throw down with Batman, and he's going to do what? He's going to bring technology to Batman. Lucius Fox is the brains behind Wayne Enterprises, and so he gives Bruce Wayne all this really cool shit, the Kevlar vest, the guns, the tumbler. And now he augments his physiognomy. And he's got all these things to go along with this training that Ra's al Ghul / Henri Ducard has given him. So these are now the fathers, the absent fathers in his life. But Lucius Fox is very important because according to legend, the first king and ruler of Atlantis was Lucifer, who, by the way, was theoretically a biological combination, a synthesis of Orion and Syrian lineage. And so he became the god that gave humanity technology. And in the movie, he is the god, theoretically, that gives Batman technology. So here we have collusion. Now, here's where it gets pretty interesting. If I asked you what sign you think Morgan Freeman is, what would you say? Based on all the front loading that I've done for the last hour or so. Well, if you don't say Gemini, then you really haven't been listening, because Morgan Freeman is a Gemini. He's born June 1st. His good buddy, who he's been to the Bohemian Grove with, by the way, is Clint Eastwood, who's a member of the Bohemian Grove. What is Clint Eastwood's birthday? It's May 31st. He's a Gemini. Ra's al Ghul, a.k.a. Henri Ducard, who is played by Liam Neeson. What's his birthday? Bingo. Gemini. Cillian Murphy, interesting character, interesting actor, very interesting actor, plays Crane / Scarecrow. By the way, Liam Neeson was born June 7th. Cillian Murphy plays Dr. Crane. Well, guess what his sign is? Gemini. Interesting, isn't it? So now we've got these characters in the movie that are astrologically personifying the duality. Cillian Murphy was also, okay, what does he do in that film? He is creating this vapor which, when activated by a microwave transmission, which is a sound, turns people into savages. It turns them into, it makes them insane. There's a scene in Batman Begins when this happens. You have to really pay attention. There's a scene where somebody eats the face of another person. It happens very quickly. So what is happening in Batman Begins in that chaos, in that panic scene is, guess what? Potentially predictive programming of a zombie apocalypse. Now you'll see that there's going to be sliding doors with characters and movies here, and so you're going to need to pay attention. Cillian Murphy was in another film. The film is 28 Days Later. And what's that film about? It's about the zombie apocalypse. Who is the director of 28 Days Later? Danny Boyle. What is Danny Boyle doing next week? Danny Boyle, actually it's Friday, 2 days from now. Danny Boyle is directing the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. So now we begin to see an entirely different layer of reality begin to unfold. Katie Holmes is a Sagittarius. James Holmes, the shooter, is a Sagittarius. Here we go. Duality and doubling. Again, very strange stuff. Extremely strange stuff. What's interesting about Christopher Nolan and his films is that he uses a lot of the same actors, and they're English, or sometimes they're New Zealand, Kiwis, or Australians, as in Guy Pearce and Hugh Jackman. But these guys almost always have an American accent. And Christopher Nolan himself is a dual citizen. His mother is an American stewardess, and his father is an English screenwriter. So again, we have duality in play. And his characters are English. Well, his characters are American, but they're actually English. So they're acting out this duality again. It's kind of mind-boggling, actually. So let's get into with the final few minutes of the show here. Let's get into Christian Bale. That's an interesting name, Christian Bale, don't you think? It's kind of like Morgan Freeman, Christian Bale. So he was in another film by Christopher Nolan, a very good film called The Prestige, which stars Hugh Jackman, Michael Caine. Michael Caine, of course, being Alfred. You'll see in Christopher Nolan movies that he uses the same characters in different films. I believe there's a reason for that. One, the reason is he knows the characters and he can work with them, or he knows the actors are working. But two, again, I've shown this before with Bruce Willis, that these characters then create bridges between films, and there's a sense of familiarity in the mind of the viewer, and that sense of familiarity can be navigated, guided, steered, manipulated, because you're buying into this. Oh, I know that person. I know that person. I know that person. You really don't know the person. You know what they theoretically are or stand for. So in The Prestige, it's a film about dueling magicians, and they are Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. And Christian Bale plays Hugh Jackman's assistant. There's something tragic that happens. There's always something tragic that happens. And as a result, they split. So now the one becomes two. Keep that in mind. One becomes two, duality. And the big trick is called The Prestige. And what happens is that there's a spoiler here, so just turn your radio down if you want to hear it. Christian Bale has, his character, Alfred Borden, has created the ultimate trick. He allows himself to be placed in public in a situation where it looks very perilous. And all of a sudden, there's a flash and smoke, and he reappears in another part of the theater. And people are astounded. They never tire of this trick. And Hugh Jackman, who can't stand him, his biggest rival, he decides that he needs to learn the prestige, and he'll do anything. He winds up going to America, where he eventually migrates to Colorado, where Tesla lives. Tesla, played by David Bowie. And it's there where he encounters Tesla's technology. And what happens is he stumbles across something that at first looks like teleportation, but it's not. What it is, it's a doubling. It's a technology that doubles and creates, for lack of a better term, a clone. And he uses this technology in order to achieve his end. He'll do the prestige. He'll use the technology. He'll create essentially a double of himself. And he'll be the one that will extricate himself, meaning Hugh Jackman, his character, Angier is his name. He'll be the one that will survive the event. But the double that's created through the Tesla technology is killed. And it's killed by his helper at that time, which is Michael Caine, who winds up detesting him. He does this again and again and again. He winds up killing the double again and again and again. Now, how did Christian Bale's character perform the trick? There were two of them. He had a twin brother. And they lived with this secret their entire life. And in fact, they even switched lovers and wives. And each of them had distinctly different characters. So again, here we have this underlay of duality and doubling. And it comes from this movie called the prestige, which is all about the manipulation of reality. It's about illusion. Keep that in mind. Another very important film in Christopher Nolan's oeuvre is Inception. And Inception is about the convergence of dream states and dream states as realities. It's an important film. And it's important because it gives us a peek behind the scenes with that movie about what's taking place. And I'm just getting started. There's more. There's a lot more. A lot more. But what I'm seeing here through the application of Gemini, Jupiter and Gemini, and the characters. By the way, Christopher Nolan's brother, Jonathan Nolan, he wrote the script for Dark Knight Rises. He's a Gemini too, 6676. So, what's it all about? Well, there's more, and maybe I'll talk about it on the Friday show. I'm sorry I didn't do any readings today. There's only been one person online. Why don't we go ahead and talk to them? Let's just see who they are. Hello, you're on the air.
Hello?
Yeah, hey.
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I got a late start. I was up late last night, and unfortunately, I stumbled into the show because I just needed to sleep. But I'm doing good. I'm getting up to speed. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I just wanted a mini reading of. I wanted to know. First of all, my name is Amon, and I'm calling from Carolinas. And
Okay.
I wanted to know is it possible for me to try to go out and find employment or kind of start my own business and doing spiritual work, for clients and stuff?
Let's see. Well, let me. So what's going to happen here, Mon, is we're probably going to go over the line with time, but that's okay. Why don't you go ahead and give me your birthday?
Birthday 3/4/71, March.
Okay, so we know you're a Pisces right out of the gate.
Right.
And anything spiritual that has to do with the Pisces, we like. And then it becomes all about the practical application of that spirituality. And look at you. What sign? What's your moon in? Your moon is in Gemini. How interesting. So you've got a Gemini moon, Mercury Pisces. Looks like you've got Venus in Capricorn, Mars in Sag, Jupiter in Sag. Okay, so I'm going to hone in on your Jupiter and your Neptune because those are conjunct. Neptune at 3 degrees and Jupiter at 5 degrees. Sagittarius is, of all the signs, along with Pisces, it's the most religious sign in some ways. Sagittarius represents what I would call exoteric religion, or or exoteric spirituality, which would be things like Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism. These are all the sort of the big religions. And,
right.
And so that's what Sagittarius represents. It's the formalization of a spiritual system. Pisces is the esoteric domain of spirituality, so it would be more along the lines of Sufism or things that deal with subtle matter, less about it would be less about orthodoxy and ritual and more about the transmission of the essence. So with those especially with Neptune in play, Neptune in Sagittarius, you would have this desire in your life to be able to express a sense of religiosity, and what does religion theoretically do? It gives people, precepts and codes to live by. It's an organizing principle, and that's part of Sagittarius. But inherent in Sagittarius itself is fire, and it's an expansive sign, and it's a sign that likes to prop people up and inspire them and give them something enthusiastic to live by in their lives. It wants to see people better themselves and do do things for themselves in ways that are inspiring for other people. So it's very important for you in your life. You need to be inspired. You need to inspire people.
Okay.
Disregard that. So that's really important with that Neptune in Pisces. The challenge with Neptune in Pisces is you don't always know how to go about doing that. How do I do that? How do I do that? What's the best way to do that? Jupiter in Sagittarius, which I have, by the way, is great. Jupiter is Sagittarius is in its own sign with its own planet, and it gets to express itself very expansively. So you need to take the path of wisdom. The path of wisdom is vital with Jupiter and Sagittarius. Being able to help people, being of what I would call enlightened service is really important with Jupiter and Sagittarius. You've got to figure out a way where you can plug in and give people hope, give people inspiration. This all and the two of these planets are connected. They're conjunct one another. So they're really working theoretically towards that aim in your life. Jupiter conjunct Neptune is very spiritual. It's very again, I just keep coming back to the word inspiring and expansive. And you're not going to be satisfied in your life until you reach this place, until you touch this place, until it becomes a part of you. You know, Mars and Sagittarius, again, Mars and Sagittarius is also about the same thing that we've been talking about. Neptune is receptive, Jupiter's expansive, Mars is active. So it's the active application of these Sagittarian ideals. So how do you go about doing that? Well, theoretically, Sagittarius is connected to sport, okay, and athletics. Now, I don't know if you're athletic or you have any kind of background with sports, but potentially you could figure out a way where you could converge some of the ideas about being a spiritual teacher or helping people along their spiritual path as it relates to the body, as it relates to athletics, as it relates to the athletic mind. There are people, like there's this guy, Harry Edwards, who used to work for the 49ers. He's a sports psychologist. And his whole idea, his whole thing is to get people to have peak experiences, right? So if you could somehow combine something very practical, like, for instance, personal training, right? Let's say you wanted to personally train people, whether it's through martial arts or self-defense or at a gym. You could then begin to apply some of these principles, these spiritual principles that you want to impart in people's lives. What would people do for you as a personal trainer? They would pay you. They would pay you to do that for them. So this is a very practical way for you to get your feet on the ground and help people, right? You know, maybe it's teaching martial arts, or maybe it's teaching. There's a book that if you're not familiar with it, I would highly, highly recommend it. It's called The Way of the Spiritual Warrior. It's by Dan Millman. And you can, if you haven't read it, I suggest you read it. Dan Millman is still very popular, and he's got a new book. So this is what we're talking about here. It's combining these aspects so that you can actually have a plan and make money off of it, right? And most people, by the way, I mean, if you were to sit down and say, I'm going to have an esoteric seminar on something, you'd get some people. You could do that. But if you were to say, hey, I'm a personal trainer, I've got these things that I'm working with, I'm not just training your body, I'm training your spirit, I'm training your mind. This is what we're talking about. And again, I know nothing about your background. I'm just basing all of this, you know, on your stars. You have Chiron in Aries, and Aries is a leadership quality. Aries is leadership energy. It's martial energy, you know, like martial arts. But Chiron is this planet where, you know, we kind of wrestle with Chiron, and we have to figure out how we deal with the unclaimed aspects of our lives, the shadow of our lives. And that's Chiron. So for you, the shadow of Chiron in Aries is grappling with being a leader, taking a leadership role. Sometimes people that have Chiron in Aries take on too much, and people resent that. Sometimes they don't take on enough, and they resent not taking on enough. So it's this lifelong dance with being a leader and, you know, tapping into martial arts or martial energy, which is Mars, could be very beneficial for you with that Chiron in Aries. So I would say, with the exception really of, well, you have Saturn in Taurus, okay? Saturn in Taurus is about the body. It's about the body. The body is, again, the temple. It's health. It's nutrition. It's supplements. It's herbs. Saturn in Taurus is in your charts for you to study that stuff. How does the body work? What are the chakras? What keeps us moving? What keeps us flowing? Saturn is where we put focus. Focus, focus, focus. And for you, your Saturn is all about understanding this stuff. So theoretically, you would employ your Saturnian knowledge, in the service of helping people spiritually, martially, athletically. I think that would be a really good thing for you to do. Learn as much about the body as possible. Figure out how it works. Figure out how to keep people on track. Again, here are things that you can actually give people. Maybe you want to figure out if you can get a degree in sports nutrition. Now, even though you can't be, maybe the employment thing is not happening right now, I guarantee you somebody somewhere out there has a scholarship or would allow you to tap into something that could get you a certificate, right? And if you're going to teach, you're going to teach people a lot of times, even though you've got Sagittarius in your chart. And by the way, Sagittarius is the sign of the natural. It is people that have high quotients of Sagittarius know things automatically. They don't necessarily have to work at things very hard. They just get it. However, you would need some sort of certification, and that could be like personal training certification or some kind of nutrition certification. You've got that little piece of paper now that allows you to put your shingle out. And if you can combine these things, I think you're really on to something. I mean, you've got a lot of high energy in your chart with the Pisces sun, with all the Sagittarius, with the exception really of Saturn in Taurus. You don't have a lot of what I would call worker energy. You're not necessarily here to do hard manual labor. That doesn't mean you can't train, you can't excel with your body. You can do hard work, but with all that Sagittarius, it has to be aligned towards a spiritual purpose, or else it's not going to work. That is the lesson of Sagittarius. Does that make sense?
Okay. So what? Yeah. So what about because I have some people, I do spiritual readings for, and then I do spiritual work for. Is that what you like about like?
You can do that. You can do that. I mean, the counseling part is. I mean, Sagittarius wants to impart wisdom. I mean, that is really the highest octave of Sagittarius is imparting of wisdom. And so, yeah, you can do that. Absolutely. You can do the readings. You're a Pisces. Pisces are channels. They're fluid channels. The key with Pisces is you've got to keep your channel clear. That is really important. Like you can't you can't do drugs. You can't drink. You can't fuck around with women that are not at the same spiritual level and vibration as you. You can't do that because that'll foul your channel. As a Pisces, you got to have a clear channel. Really important.
Also, I can't be, drinking liquor and stuff.
No, man, you got to drop that. You got to drop. Yeah. I'm just going to lay the law down with you. You got to drop that because you're as a Pisces, you're so absorptive. And I'll tell you, one of the things, and you're talking to a guy who has drank. I started drinking when I was 12 years old. Okay. And I've drank all my life, and I've had great experiences drinking. Trust me, I've had a lot of fun drinking. But at the end of the day, last year I decided to stop drinking because it was becoming a detriment, and the vibration of the planet is moving beyond alcohol. We're becoming much more subtle in terms of our interactivity with the planet, and alcohol is a very low vibration. And what I realized is that when I would drink, I would allow myself to be open to negative spiritual influences. So what are we talking about? We're talking about demons, entities, whatever you want to call them. They come in and they hang out with you when you drink, and they stick around for a while. And is this the kind of energy you want to bring into your readings with people? I don't think so. You've got Mercury in Pisces. You're very open. You're very psychic. Your Mercury conjuncts your sun. It's within 2 degrees of your sun. So you need to be spiritually clear. You've got to be spiritually clear. It's hard, but I'm telling you, you get past the first 30 days and you're free and clear. Now the thing is, you've got to be able to change your social relationships as a result of this. I stopped going to bars. Why? There was nothing for me to do there. I walked around and people were getting drunk and having their drunken little, games, and I found them to be, pretty boring, to be honest with you. So, then you got to restructure your social life, and that's a challenge, because then what happens is that people become lonely, So then what do you do when you're lonely? Well, I think I'll have a beer. I'm feeling down in my cups, right? So now you need support. This is why people go to AA. I'm neutral on AA. I've seen it help people, but I also know the roots of AA. The AA was started by the Rockefellers in conjunction with Carl Jung. So you need support. If you're going to get off alcohol, you got to have people around you that will support you in your relationship with that. It's vital, because it's those moments where we get lonely that we need that we succumb to the lesser parts of our nature. So, all right, what did we accomplish here in this? Hopefully, I gave you something to think about with the Sagittarian, the body stuff. Definite affirmation on you doing readings and being a spiritual counselor for people. But what I'm seeing here is, if you really want to be serious about it, you've got to clean up the temple. That's the phrase I would use. Clean up the temple and have a sacred temple. And I'll tell you right now, once you do this, once you get off alcohol or anything else, your psychic abilities and your ability to share higher wisdom and knowledge are going to increase. It's going to blow your mind. I'm serious about this. I'm not telling you this. I'm not telling you this because I'm a spiritual authority or this is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. I'm telling you this because this is the truth. Your spiritual abilities will explode, and you're going to be blown away by what you'll be able to share with people, and that's because you've taken care. You've got a sacred relationship with what you're doing. So I want you to just walk away with that and think about it, and and if you go in this direction and you go down this path and you do it in the right way, you'll come back and call the show and tell us how you're doing, because I'd be really interested.
Okay, so just try, don't smoke or nothing, right?
No, man, give it up. I'm serious. I'm gonna be straight up with you. You're Pisces. You're Pisces.
Well, see, the reason why I said smoke, I clean some of my stuff with cigar smoke.
Oh, that's different, man. That's different. I'm just talking about smoking. And by the way, I'm not down on indica or cannabis. I'm not down on that stuff, but you got to be careful with that. If you use specifically because you're a Pisces, okay? But also they're messing with the herb. They're genetically modifying the herb, and it's creating a different experience for people. So you just need to be careful. But yeah, dude, if you're using cigarette smoke to clear the space or cigar smoke to clear the space, that's fine. I'm just talking about taking that stuff in on a body level. That's just what I'm referring to.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I just blow. You know how you blow the cleans, your Tasmans,
right?
And
exactly.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just kind of concentrate and keep praying to my ancestors and stuff, and all this power should be able to accumulate, huh?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with with Ashe, right? You're familiar with Ashe?
Ashe. I heard of it. I can't put it to my mind right yet.
So Ashe is it comes out of the Yoruba tradition, and Ashe is it's like a life force. It's like chi, right? And it's a person accumulates Ashe or life force, and the person who has a lot of Ashe is considered to be a very powerful person, and it can be a spiritual leader for their people, their tribe, whatever, what have you. And how you there are two ways that you can accumulate Ashe. All right, here they are. The first is to exhibit what's called coolness, coolness. And coolness is the ability to respond in an unhurried way under pressure. Okay, so if you can be faced with life situations and be cool, then what happens? Well, you can accumulate more ashe. That's like the one thing, that's a big thing. So that's basically, and how do you get there? Well, you got to be clear. You got to be in the moment, right? You've got to be present so that you can respond to life accordingly without being frazzled or burning off, some alcohol through your liver, 2 or 3 days early. You've got to be right there. You've got to be present. The other way that you accumulate ashe is through right speech. And that means you don't talk about anybody. You don't gossip. When you say you're going to do something, you do that thing. Your word is your bond, right? So those are the two things that you can use in order to accumulate ashe. And ashe is spiritual power. It's spiritual energy. So to that end, the answer would be yes. So if you do those things, then more comes to you. And when more comes to you, what happens? More responsibility comes to you. More people come to you.
Right.
I'll share with you from my own personal perspective. Since I've done this and gone down this path, people that have come to me over the past few months it's been profound things, like women that have been raped, and working with them and helping them in their own way. People that have had loss, and grief, losing a mate, and working with them. People that are dealing with madness. I mean, so once you get into this and begin to anchor the energy, then the types of people that come to you shift. And so you need to have that responsibility. If you want to be truly there for your people, you have to be really present for that.
Oh, okay. So I need to don't be talking about people and all this nonsense.
That's right, man.
Yeah. Just don't get entangled with the nonsense conversation, right?
That's right. You always take the high road. If somebody wants you to bring you in and get into kind of a hater discussion, to say, you know what, I'm not really interested in talking about that. I see this person, and I see this person in other ways that may not really apply to this conversation. So if you want to talk about something else, talk about something else, or you just excuse yourself and walk away. You just do that. You got to keep those lines clear.
Right. Okay. That's what's up then. Okay. So all this I kind of just need to clear out.
That's right.
Okay.
And give yourself. You do this. You take 90 days. You do what I'm sharing with you for 90 days. I guarantee you'll see a major difference, and you'll make more money too.
So what I need is just stop the drinking, stop the sipping liquor, and stop drinking beer, and stay meditating and communicating with my ancestors and stuff, and the power will shift, huh?
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay. So that's what that's what I was looking to do, really, honestly.
I hear you. That's why you called.
Yeah. But I sure thank you, man, for all what you told me, really.
All right, man. But listen, go out there and do it, and do it right, okay?
Okay, then.
All right.
I sure will.
Give us a call back sometime.
Okay, man. I sure will.
All right. Take good care.
All right. Bye-bye.
And if you're listening, you're now listening to the recorded portion of the show. Man, I'm just getting rolling. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Sorry I was late. There'll be more on Friday. Trust me. It's the Olympics. And I'll be there. Not the Olympics, but I'll be here. And we'll synchronize with the Olympics. All right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been listening to the portion of my burgeoning broadcast empire, navigating the astrological matrix. I'll see you on Friday.
In the name I am, Sanat Kumara. I call forth the light of the living word, beloved Elohim, beloved archangels, beloved mighty Choans of the rays and the lords of karma. I call for the action of beloved Pallas Athena, beloved goddess of liberty, beloved Nada, beloved Kuan Yin, beloved Portia, beloved great divine director, beloved all-seeing eye of God, Cyclopeia. Let God's will be done, let God's will be done, let God's will be done. I demand the action of the sacred fire in this hour. Descend, almighty cosmos, secret rays. I am the holding of the balance of Lord Gautama Buddha, beloved Sanat Kumara and the seven holy Kumaras. I call upon the sacred fire, I call upon the light of God that never fails. Beloved mighty, I am present, come forth in this hour of the victory. Come forth in this hour of the victory of the God flame. I demand the full power, beloved mighty, to be with us this night. Beloved Jesus, send to me, Lord mighty, Gautama and Sanat Kumara. Come, Lord, now in the victory of the God flame. Send the light of 10,000 suns. Beloved mighty, stand, mighty, stand, mighty, stand. Around this fortune now. I call upon the great central sun magnet. I call upon the light of God.